Hello and welcome to From the Top. This is a program which aims to get into the real life of very successful people. We're hoping that you will learn from them not just how successful potentially or technically their business was, but what they thought and how they behaved and what they believe in life. And I'm very lucky for this first program to have Tim Penner. Thank you very much indeed, Tim.
My pleasure.
I think perhaps one of the interesting things about Tim is that he started his career and finished his career in the same company. Started at the bottom, and by the time he retired very recently, he was the president of Procter & Gamble Canada. So Tim, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Tell me, rags to riches, do you have a privileged background?
Definitely not privileged, no. I'd say started off, my family was pretty middle class, maybe below middle class at the beginning when I was a child, but middle class and a very typical public school upbringing in a medium-sized town. I grew up in Waterloo, Ontario at the time, population of about 30 or 40,000 maybe, and very typical upbringing.
Well before the tech bubble in those days.
Oh, absolutely, yes, well before the tech bubble. It was a university town, and I ended up going to Wilfrid Laurier University, which was in the town that I grew up in.
So, Dad was able to afford to send you there, or?
No, well, I paid for my own education through scholarships and through summer jobs and so on. My parents. By the time I went to university, certainly had enough money that they could have, but it was really, that's not the way my family worked. If you wanted to do something, you paid for it, and so I paid for my own education, as my sister did in her case.
So just you and the sister?
I have one other sister. I had an older sister who passed away at a young age, and that sort of influenced my life in some ways, but the two of us for most of my life. Right.
Actually, that must be terrible to have a sibling die so young. I mean, most of us couldn't even contemplate that.
Yeah, well, it's true. My eldest sister died when I was 8. She was 16. She had been born ill. She had cancer as a child, and in fact, because she had cancer, this was in the days before socialized medicine in Canada, and so my family had huge medical bills. And when I said earlier that we were rather poor when I was a small child, it's because my father was working 3 jobs trying to pay off all these medical bills. My elder sister, had been in Sick Kids Hospital in her when she was very young, when she was a toddler, and we ran up big medical bills, and so my dad was working 3 jobs just to pay off those bills, and I think from him I probably learned perseverance and hard work.
What did he do?
He started off his career as a tool and die maker. So a tool and die maker was someone who would file a piece of metal into a die or a punch that would be used in a manufacturing setting to punch out some plastic part or something like that. And that's what he learned to do. He had been in the Navy. He then, when he left the Navy, he became a tool and die maker, learned a skill, a trade, and hated it. Absolutely hated the life of filing a small piece of metal into something for 9 or 10 hours a day, and I don't blame him. That sounds pretty monotonous to me.
And the other 2 jobs, what did he do?
And then, then the other 2 jobs, he drove a bus, and then he worked on the weekends as an usher at the local hockey arena. Allowed him to watch the hockey games, but also make some money on the side. So he worked very hard, and then after I think probably 10 years of that. He found that he got recruited to sell insurance, which was a complete change for him. But he found that he could be pretty successful at selling insurance, and he did a very good job and became known in that area for selling insurance, and had quite a large business.
It's just quite a big insurance area now, isn't it, Waterloo?
It is, yeah. He ran one small agency and served customers and sold them car insurance and life insurance and household insurance and so on, and he did very well at that.
So you obviously decided not to be a tool and die maker then.
Definitely that, but also decided not to, made a choice to not go into business with my dad, because he would very much have liked to pass along his insurance agency to me. And but that it was time to move on. For me, I didn't really want to be in the insurance business. We had the office in our house for most of my life, and so I knew what it was like to sell insurance. And I thought, well, that would be a little too closely following in my father's footsteps. And I'd like to take a different tack. And I set out on my own.
It's interesting that you get two types. You get the ones who take on Dad's company, and some of them do extremely well.
Yeah. And
like you said, no, I'm going to do something different.
Right.
What makes the difference? Why do you decide?
I don't know why that is. I don't know. I grew up. My father and his brother were both in the insurance business in Kitchener and Waterloo, two cities that are right beside each other. And
they both did it.
They were both in the insurance business. And so, when I was growing up, it would be when I would tell someone my name, they'd say, "Oh, are you the son of this brother or that brother?" They would just know automatically. And I didn't like just being the offspring of these two brothers. I sort of wanted to make a name for myself, and so it was too comfortable to go into the family business, if you will. I went a different route.
It shows, I think, intelligence. I just follow what my father did because I never thought of anything else.
I don't know if it's intelligence or maybe foolishness that I thought I could do it on my own without his help.
At school, was there active counselling and that sort of thing? Did people come along and say, "Hey, look, you could be a lawyer," or "Look, you could be"?
No, guidance counselors at my high school were pretty much non-existent, and in fact, coming out of high school, I had signed up to go to. Neither of my parents went to university, and so I signed up to go to the local university because Wilfrid Laurier, which is in my hometown, because there were two perfectly good schools in my town. But I signed up to study history, and only in the summer just before university started, I ran into a friend and an acquaintance from high school, and we were chatting about what we were each going to do at university, and he said he was going to study business, and I said, "I didn't even know that you could study business at university. It sounds quite interesting. I'd like to investigate this a little further." And as I learned it, got to know a little bit about it, I thought, this sounds better than what I'm going to study. So I went and talked to the dean of the business school at Wilfrid Laurier and said, "I've changed my mind. I was going to be in history, but I'd really like to join the business school." And he said, "Well, it's about 6 days before school starts. You can't do that." And he said, "Well, let me think about it. What are your grades?" And when I showed him my transcript, fortunately for me, I had very good grades. And he said, "Well, yeah, I think I take that back. We will take you in the business school." And I enjoyed it. I loved business school, and it kind of helped me decide my fate. But frankly, I had no idea what I wanted to do in high school. No idea.
And that was presumably normal. Most people didn't.
I don't think my friends knew what they were going to do either. I think I had a friend who was the son of a doctor. He was going to be a doctor, and he is a doctor today. But other than that, I don't think any of us had any notion of what we were going to do.
And one wonders how much, if someone had actually given you some ideas, whether that would have influenced you either.
I don't take advice well, so I'm not sure it would have helped.
Excuse me, I thought you were the president of this company.
Yeah, I know.
You changed, did you?
Well, I've never, taking advice on what I should do personally. I've always set my own course.
Right.
Yeah.
So, first thing, obviously, you had to work jolly hard because presumably your parents couldn't afford to send you to university. So
they whether they could have or not, I honestly don't know. But they chose not to, and so I worked summer jobs, worked part-time jobs, and was fortunate enough to get some scholarships, and that paid for my education.
Fortunate, yes, just luck.
Yeah, well, it's not just luck. You have to work at those too. But I did have the grades and the background that allowed me to win some scholarships.
And then at university, now you're doing business.
I was in undergrad
Any ideas
business.
then what you wanted to do?
Not really, but it was almost a process of elimination. I knew what I didn't like. I didn't really like the accounting side. I was okay at it, and it was okay, but it wasn't my passion. But I really enjoyed marketing. I enjoyed the human side of marketing, of understanding what could we do to influence somebody's behavior. That was intriguing to me, and so that's what marketing is, and that's what I ended up choosing as my career. And
You could have been a lobbyist then, couldn't you?
I could have, maybe I could have been a number of things. I probably could have failed at a number of things. But I liked marketing, and I liked the scientific side of trial and error, of trying various things and watching human behavior and seeing whether you could influence someone to purchase something that maybe they hadn't considered before.
Or they didn't need.
Well, I don't think that's actually very possible. I think you might be able to convince them once to buy something they don't need, but you won't convince them to repeat that.
I love, you have this lovely saying that he could sell ice to Eskimos. But that really has a flaw in it, because at some stage the Eskimo is going to realize that she doesn't really need the ice.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's the end of your campaign, really, isn't it?
So you can convince somebody to buy something once, but I was in a business where we counted on people buying things repeatedly. That's how the business works. And so it doesn't actually help to convince somebody to buy something that they don't need. You'll only get one purchase.
So you were able to do all this during the course? The course gave you that sort of insight?
It allowed me to understand that marketing was perhaps something that I might enjoy. And then and still now, companies would come on campus and recruit. And I was hired out of in my final year of university, I was hired by Procter & Gamble. They came on campus. They interviewed on campus, like many other companies did. And I joined them straight out of school.
Why do you think they chose you?
Well, I don't know, but I know why we choose others. I don't.
Right.
In my case, I'm not sure, but we choose. The company that I worked for, Procter & Gamble, chooses people based on, with the premise that the past is a predictor of the future. And so if you want someone who is an achiever, who thinks on their own and can accomplish things in your business, then you look to their past. So we look at, are people active in clubs on campus? And if so, what did they actually do? Are they active in their local community? And if so, what have they been able to accomplish? So you look for accomplishment. If you want a higher accomplishment, you can find it. You can find people who are accomplished. And you don't do that by asking esoteric questions. You ask them you find out about it by asking them about what they've actually done. So what have you done? I see that you were, on your resume, the president of an association on campus. So what did you do? What were the problems that you saw? What did you accomplish while you were there? What would you do differently if you had to do over again? And that's what determines whether someone will come into your company and really make a personal difference or not. Have they made a difference in the past?
In fact, when we were talking earlier, you told me that also, to a certain extent, you chose Procter & Gamble.
Yes.
Again, why was that? What was it you liked about them?
Coming out of an undergrad business degree, I had a recognition that I had lots still to learn, and I certainly didn't have all that many skills, and so I needed to find some people that I could learn from. And so my choice was based on the fact that they asked me tougher questions than anybody else. When I interviewed with Procter & Gamble, they asked me harder questions. They seemed to want to delve into my past to a degree that nobody else did, and I thought, these people seem to take recruiting very seriously, and I think I can learn from them because I think they're smart. And that was it for me. That's why I chose them. And because I had other offers, but for me, that made the difference. I thought, these are people from whom I can learn.
So, interesting point then. Don't be just incredibly hardworking, totally dedicated and getting good grades, but being just one of the boys. Do something else.
I absolutely. And I think that most companies, people don't know what happens when you get into the interview process, but interviewing is all about understanding what people have accomplished in the past. That's the biggest part of it. They may throw some hypothetical questions at you to see how you react, but for the most part, the premise is that the past is a predictor of the future. And so if you graduate from university having having just gone to class, gone to the pub, and gone home, then you're not going to get the best jobs. You really need to accomplish things while you're there and express yourself and find a way to make a personal difference, because that's what you'll be talking about in those interviews.
I suppose you could be doing that at school as well.
Absolutely.
Not just
Yeah, you can do it in the community. You can do it at school. You can do it on the sports field. You need to find a way to do more, and to separate yourself from the pack of all the other people that are graduating from university, because there's lots of those.
There used to be, certainly in my day, a big emphasis on sport. If you were the captain of the rugby or the football or whatever, QED, you were probably a good guy. I don't know, make decisions or whatever, and that tended to be quite a good entree to getting a good job. Oh, he was captain of rugby.
Right.
That fell away a lot in the sort of 80s and the 90s, but it seems to be coming back again now. People are equating people who are good at sport. Is that the dedication, or?
I think it demonstrates a perseverance, demonstrates time management skills. Whether or not someone is good at sport, it's not the only way to demonstrate that you can separate yourself from the pack, but it's one way. You can also do that through being the student body president, or you can do it through community involvement. But somehow you have to, I think, for students in university, they have to find a way that to demonstrate that there's more to them than just going to class, because there's thousands and thousands of other students graduating from university as well.
Do you think that one of the things I've noticed, I may be wrong, today, whatever it is you do, whether it be in the drama part of the university or whether you're in the football part of the university, each bit is so intense that it takes up, if say you're the football, you're training every night, you're doing,
right.
And so you can't do anything else really, apart from getting your grades.
Right.
Whereas 20, 30 years ago, it was very much more relaxed, and you could play rugby or football, you could be running the debating society, because you only train perhaps once or twice a week for a couple of hours.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Is that a problem, do you think, that we're now concentrating too much and not letting the kids sort of have more of a variety while they're at university?
I think sports in particular it's become such a money generator for universities that in many cases it becomes overwhelming. But still, there are still students who are graduating with solid grades and having participated in a university sport and are also doing other things. I think there's still an option for the students to find a way to express themselves and to find a way to make a difference on their school campus. And you just can't do one thing.
No. So you got hired. Now I understand also your wife was also at university with you. Is that right?
Yes. Well, she wasn't my wife at the time. She was my girlfriend. But we were in university together. Yes. And in fact, and we were both interested in marketing work. And so Procter & Gamble is a fantastic large company that has a big marketing department, and it's one of the companies that we're interviewing with. And she went for her interview first. And I remember picking her up at the bus station, and she said, "I got a job offer." And it was fantastic. She had took the bus from Waterloo to Toronto, did her interview, got back on the bus, came home, and she was very excited she got a job offer. So I actually phoned the company, my contact, and said, "Look, you've just hired my girlfriend, and we're serious about one another, and we probably don't want to work at the same company, so I'm not going to come for my interview. Thanks very much." And he's
that could have changed your life.
Well, it could have, absolutely. And he said, it doesn't matter to us, so it shouldn't matter to you. It's a big enough company. We can put you in separate divisions, and so come for your interview anyway. Now, at the time, I had a job offer from another company, and the principal reason why I came for the interview was that he said, "We're going to take you out for dinner, we're going to, you stay in a hotel for the night, and we'll pay your gas, we'll pay your mileage," and so on. And I knew that they would pay me more mileage than the gas would actually cost. And I was a poor student, and I'd get a meal as well, a dinner, a nice dinner, and staying in a hotel for the night. So I came principally for that reason. I came to the interview, but I changed my mind during the interview. I thought, wow, these people are. I like the business. I like the people that I'm meeting with. And as I said earlier, they asked me very difficult questions, and they probed to a degree that other people didn't probe. And I thought, I can really learn from them. And so in the end, my girlfriend and I at the time, my wife now, we both decided to join Procter & Gamble, and we did. And we were in separate divisions, and it worked out exceptionally well.
I'm interested as we talk, because I think for the youngsters, or those that are younger than us anyway, yes, to learn and have parallels and so on of today and yesterday. Tremendous amount of drugs, perhaps soft drugs, I mean hash or whatever, it seems to be an awful lot of it today, particularly amongst those who can afford it. Do you think it's worse today, or there's more of it today than when you were young?
Yeah, it's hard. I don't know. I was in high school in the 70s and in the early 70s, and there seemed to be a lot of drug culture then too. I have to say, though, looking back, you know, there was two factions in my high school years, and there were the folks who spent a lot of time with drugs, and they tended to fry their brains early and sort of drift off into nowhere land. And those of us who didn't go that route, I think certainly have risen higher. I would say
right.
that, and have done pretty well.
Of course, there is the peer pressure thing, isn't it?
It's very strong.
More
in
the drinking pats than anything else.
At every age, yes.
Yeah.
But I think often when you're young, you think there's no cost. There's no cost to drinking. There's no cost, personal cost. I mean, I don't mean financial cost. I mean,
there is that too.
Yeah, there's that. But they think there's no consequence, I guess, of spending their evenings drinking, spending their days smoking drugs and so on. And there is a cost. There's definitely a consequence because you can't necessarily perform. You might think you're performing, but those around you will tell you you're not. You're not performing at the same level. If you've been partying all night, whether it's alcohol or drugs, you're not performing at the same level in the morning, and that has a consequence. And I think that there's people. I think the thing that people need to understand, that young people need to understand, is you make choices in your life, and those choices have consequences, and you need to live with those consequences. So you better recognize the choices that you're making and the impact that they're going to have on your total life.
I'm presumably earlier rather than later. I mean, some people do stop when they're about 30.
Yeah.
But earlier was better.
Well, I think so. I think because bosses require performance, and if you're not performing, then they'll find somebody who is, and that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you're doing, what type of work you're doing. Any of these choices, whether it's alcohol or drugs, will inhibit your performance, and there's a consequence to that.
Mm-hmm. I was actually wondering about that because you get people who will go absolutely mad on Friday and Saturday, and the rest of the week they're okay. But if everyone else seems to be doing it, then why not?
Right.
But is it important? When you were young, did you notice it's really important to start well? In other words, you're one of 20 or 30 people who just joined, and from that instant they're watching. And in the first few months, somebody will rise to the top. Someone will show that he's exceptional, better than the others. Yeah. And gets established as being the guy who's one of the leaders.
Absolutely. I think you earn the right. I used to talk with my employees that you earn the right to more work. You earn the right. You earn the right to the toughest assignments. You earn the right to the best bosses. You earn the right to the most challenging assignments. And so you better be performing. It's not just a matter of whether you look good or whether you have the right expensive suit and you part your hair on the left or the right side. Those things are superficial. But are you performing on the job? Because people are evaluating your performance on the job, even though it might be a fairly simple, mundane task in the early stages of your career. And they're choosing the people who are doing things best, and they are given the next opportunities. And so you better be able to perform those jobs.
So in other words, get onto the top rung first.
Yeah, absolutely.
And after that, it's quite difficult to drop off, actually. They tend to, he's made a mistake, but he's a good guy, really, because he did it.
Well, I don't know about that. I think they're demanding performance at every stage along the way,
so
frankly.
You've still got to keep it up.
Absolutely, you do.
But if you get in, certainly in something like the Navy, the fast track was the fast track, and if you weren't in it, then you weren't in it.
Right.
So it's no good saying at the age of 30, right, I'm now going to start.
I'll catch the next fast track. No, you've missed the train.
I'll be really good now,
Yes.
That might be, but you can't get on that top rung.
I think that's right. I think that's definitely true. I think that's definitely true.
So don't hang around and think you can have a lovely time while you're in your 20s and catch up.
Right. Don't squander the opportunities that are presented because they might not come along again. I know of people, for example, I talked about companies coming on campus to recruit. And I knew that there were some people who said, well, I'm not going to bother with that. I'll go my own way. Never again in your entire life will there be this smorgasbord of companies coming to encourage you to come to work for them. You'll never face it again. So to miss that opportunity is just absolutely ridiculous. Because you miss it because you were out partying, miss it because you're going to go do something, you're going to do something with friends. That's just ridiculous. It'll never happen to you again. So And I think that's often the case. These opportunities missed.
It's the rest of the life.
Yeah, it has an impact on the rest of your life. You can find another path, but you're going to have to work at it.
Yeah. So, have you spent your entire career in Canada?
No, I spent the first 15 years of my career in Canada with Procter & Gamble, and then and recognized that this is a global company, and so many times employees will move from country to country. In our case, there were two of us. There were my wife and I, and we had both risen at a similar pace and had done well. So it became just more challenging for the company to find an opportunity for us both in an international role. But the company did come to both of us after 15 years, and they offered us both roles in the UK. Now, they didn't know at the time that my wife was pregnant with our daughter.
The first daughter?
The third child, the only daughter. I have two sons and a daughter. The daughter is the youngest. We had our two sons, and my wife was pregnant with our daughter, and so our response surprised them because they had worked very hard to find two roles in the same country at the general manager level. We were both general managers at the time. They had found two roles, and they were very proud of themselves. And we said, well, would there be an opportunity for just me? Because Pat's about to go off on a maternity leave. You don't know it yet, but she'll be going off on maternity leave.
Was they weren't allowed to ask that, were they?
I don't think they. Well, no, and it was very early. She was just barely pregnant, and so they wouldn't have known. And so they, fortunately for us all, they said yes. We'll send you, and Pat, we'll put you on a leave of absence, and we'll talk to you about your career options later.
They must have thought you were terrific to do all that for you.
It's a very well, it is truly a great company. I would say that, but it also is a company, excuse me, that is all about promotion from within. We never ever hire people into middle management levels. We have no relationship with recruiting companies.
Still today?
Still today. Never have. We hire only at entry level. People come in at an entry level job, and then we grow our own talent from within. That's the nature of the company. And so the only chance to fill positions internationally is to take talent out of existing countries and move them from country to country, and that's what we did. So when we moved to the UK, it was a fantastic opportunity for me and for my family.
But it seems to work, and I applaud that sort of thing. It seems to be the lazy way out to just go and buy somebody in at senior vice president level because you haven't bothered to train your own guys up.
It's a different philosophy. I know I don't, and it's what most companies do. So I'm certainly not going to throw stones at that approach. But for us, the chance to create a culture to build talent from within and grow talent for future roles is the way the company has worked always.
It didn't make them too inward-looking, less aware of the outside world?
It can do. And that's definitely, I think that's a great comment because that's exactly the risk, is that you do become myopic, inwardly looking, and so on. And that's why we move people internationally. Because if an organization in the UK had, it was on a certain path and they wanted to change things, and so they brought me from Canada, plunked me into the UK, and I brought with that, obviously I had background in the company, but not in that organization. And so I shook things up and changed things and took it in its own direction. And we do that all the time. There's people throughout the world who have been moved internationally, and that's how we bring new blood and new thinking and new approaches.
And you're big enough to be able to do that and have a variety, of course.
Exactly right. Yeah.
So how long were you in Britain for?
I was there for 3 years, 3 fantastic years. We loved it. Absolutely loved it there.
So were you expecting to like it, or were you slightly hesitant after 15 years?
After being in Canada for so long, when we went over to look, we did a little, we met with the people who were going to be the person who was going to be my boss, whom I knew remotely. We looked at housing, we tried to figure out where were the kids going to go to school. We had 2 boys that were 9 and 6 at the time, and a daughter that wasn't yet born, and we were reluctant. I would say we were reluctant because it was all so new, and now we look back and we say, oh my goodness, we should have jumped at the chance. It was the best thing that ever happened to us in our whole life. Each of us would say that, my kids included, would say it was the best experience that we ever had. Moving internationally was fabulous, not just because it was the UK. It was because it took us out of our comfort zone. It helped us to see new things and experience new things, We loved it. I absolutely loved it there.
So it would have been the same if you'd gone to Belgium or
I don't
Kenya
know.
or something like that?
I don't know. It would have been different because it would have. We were fortunate that we could speak the language, or a language sort of like the.
Learn the proper language, you mean?
Yes, right. I spoke it differently, but we had a fantastic time, and it's not easy. It definitely stretches you. It stretched all of us, but it stretched us in a good way. And I think, if I was to live my life over again, I would have tried to find a way to move internationally sooner in my career, because it does stretch you, and it does allow you to see things differently, and it helps you appreciate home more because you see it through a different lens.
Well, in fact, there are organizations, HSBC is one, where they take on international guys at the graduate level.
Yes.
And their job is to be shoveled around the world. They're hardly ever, let's say they come in from London, Britain, they're hardly ever in London. If they are in a London job, it's 2 years, they're off again.
Right.
So that really is traveling and seeing everything. Is that disruptive? I mean, if you've got a family and you want to get...
It's a challenge. There's no doubt it's a challenge, but it's a good challenge. And I think, for us, moving internationally brought us closer together as a family, because when you get parachuted into a new location, you're all you've got. You just each other.
Those beastly Brits.
Well, it's the only friends you've got, and so you start to do things together, and you go on excursions and enjoy things. It was wonderful. It was absolutely wonderful.
So when you got back, what did you sum up as what you arrived back in Canada? What did you bring back from Britain?
Well, first off, we went from the UK then to the US. So I didn't come straight back. My next job after the UK was to move to headquarters, which is in Ohio, and I lived there for 3 years as well. And then they offered me the job to come back and run P&G Canada,
right.
And that's when I came back.
Same sort of misgivings about going to Cincinnati, or were you looking forward to it by now?
No, we would miss England terribly. We loved it. We really loved it. We had fantastic friends, and it was again new. But I think by then we said this is good. Like change is good. Now we understand that yes, it'll be a change, and we'll miss the friends that we've made, but we'll keep our friends, and we'll move on, and we'll make new friends. And we did. We met some fantastic people lived in Cincinnati, Ohio, and it was very nice. It's a lovely city. It doesn't have quite as many things to do as London or Toronto, but we met some great people and had a nice time there too.
So now you've been in the career now for about 15 years at this stage when you're in Cincinnati. 18 years by now.
18 when I arrived in Cincinnati. Yes.
At this stage, what were you thinking? There was obviously going to be a career. Do you have role models? Do you have people you felt you looked up to that you wanted to be like?
Inside the company, well, there's people. There were people who I had learned from, and who I admired. Yes, the CEO of the company at one point was John Pepper, who was a fantastic individual. He had an uncanny ability to motivate others. He would, I remember when I was quite junior, still back in Canada before we had moved internationally, I made a presentation to him. He happened to be in Toronto, and I made a presentation to him, and it was nothing big, but I had a small bit on the agenda.
Right.
And then it must have been 2 years later, I saw him, and he said, "Tim, last time I saw you, you told me about such and such, this project. How's that doing anyway?" And it was uncanny, his ability to remember my name, remember what I had told him about a year or two previously, and to make it relevant, to say that was very interesting, and I felt so valued. It felt amazingly valued. So he was someone who I I'd strive to emulate. You know, he was.
But it is a great
fantastic.
gift. I mean, can you remember everyone's name when you see them?
I could not, but I tried hard. I'm not good at names, I have to say, Fred. But I did. But I.
That's okay, Peter. Don't worry.
Yeah. I did try hard to at least to remember what people were working on, try to remember a first name at least, and try to connect people to things that they'd said in the past, and to help them feel like what they were working on was important.
I've been lucky enough, I've come across someone who was like that too.
Mm-hmm.
He could remember 10 years. Amazing.
Yeah.
Did you anyone ever ask Pepper how he did it?
No, I never did. I don't know how he did it. Because it was remarkable.
Yeah.
He had just an absolutely photographic memory for names, faces, and details.
Yeah.
He was fantastic, and it was unbelievably motivating and you have to, I think when you're a junior person in an organization, you can learn so much from senior people who are positive role models, and equally as much from negative role models, to remember, how did that person make me feel? Did I feel valued? Did I feel like I was going to give my best or not? And I think you're going to run across both. Everybody's going to run across people who they just think are fantastic and people who are not. And you need to keep codifying that and remembering it, and so that you can build that into your own personal style.
Because not everybody is nice. This ridiculous model of leaders are liked is rubbish.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, they lead and they get people to do things.
Right.
Possibly reluctantly, possibly out of fear. I mean, all sorts of reasons. Or possibly just leadership.
Right.
Did you ever... you must have come across some of those who were obviously great leaders. Well, they got people to do things, but you didn't like them.
Yes, but you didn't necessarily like them as people. But I think the best compliment you can pay to somebody is that I did my best work when I worked for you. That's really the measure of whether someone's a good leader or not. Does he get people to do great work? And it's up to the leader, I think, to be the chameleon, to change his or her style to help evoke the best work out of the people that work for them. Not up to the subordinate to adjust to the leader. I think it's the leader who has to adjust to have a full toolkit of things that they can try and do to try and pull out of people their very best work, to make them want to deliver their best.
I think the word want is important.
Yes.
Not just I did my best work because I had to.
No, not because he cracked a big whip. Yeah, because you're not going to do that for long.
No. In fact, as soon as he goes, you won't.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned being a chameleon for them, as it were. Because in my small experience, the leader, and this is obviously my career in the Navy, the whole ship's company took on the personality of the leader. And when he was in command of that submarine, that ship, that was him.
Yes.
Not nastily, but they just all took on what they thought he would like and do, and how he... And a new chap came along, same people, completely different.
You're right.
Not necessarily less efficient,
yes,
but like him. That sort of rather contradicts
I think,
in a way.
I think to some extent it's true, but I think that means there's a tremendous responsibility that goes with leadership. You better understand the impact you're having on people, and you better think about, really spend a lot of time thinking about how you're influencing people and whether you're bringing out the best in them or not, because they will watch you. They will try to please. That's the nature of people. They come to work every day wanting to please the people around them, wanting to do good work, and so you need to harness that somehow and use it to your joint advantage.
Did you spend a lot of time getting to know them, because you hear so much of people just sit in the ivory tower and have meetings and push paper around? How important was it for you to try and remember their names? Or
it's
get
very
to know
important. It's critically important that you remember their names, remember what they're working on, and help everybody to feel valued, feel like the role that they're playing, no matter whether it's a big role or a smaller role, is important in the total end result. I think one of the biggest failures that leaders often make is that they pick favorites, and they circulate with their favorites, and they spend all of their time with their favorites. And I think that an effective leader has to do just the opposite. Has to make everybody feel like they're a favorite, make everybody feel valued. I made it a personal rule that when you walk into a room full of employees, you should go and talk to the people that you know the least, not the people that you know the most. The people that you know the most, they know you already. But you need to gravitate to the people who you know the least, and perhaps the most junior, because you can probably have a bigger influence there. So I made it a rule that I would sit at lunch with the summer interns, not my senior team. I would join. I would go and have coffee with the person that I knew the least, and in the process, you could help draw the line for that person between what they were doing, what their job was, and the overall goals of the organization. And if you can draw that line solidly enough, you can give them greater purpose in their job. They could realize, wow, I might be just, working on this part of the, in IT, and I'm working on this program, and if you could help people to tell them, here's why that's so important. Did you realize that program that you're working on is critical to us winning this big new business, or saving this money that's going to help us hit our profit targets, or help us to enter into some new territory. You can have them float out of there and float on those fumes for days and days and days, and that's meaningful to people.
And it doesn't take long, does it?
It doesn't take long at all. No.
So, all great stuff, and that I'm admiring that tremendously. Now, at what stage in your career did you realize that?
Oh, I think very early. Early because I had bosses that left me feeling tremendously inspired, and I had other bosses that I just dreaded coming to work. And fortunately, I realized this too shall pass. In those moments when you're working for someone that's terrible, you realize, it won't be that long, and I'll be on to something else, and they'll be on to something else, and that person might not be my boss for all that long. So as long as I can see predominantly good managers around me, and predominantly good people, I happen to be with someone who I don't care for just now, but this too shall pass, and I'll be on to somebody new, and I'll learn from them. And as I say, I realize I can learn a lot from. You can learn as much from the failure model as you can from the success model. And so what is it that is leaving me so uninspired about working for this individual, and how can I make sure that I never do that to anybody else when I'm a manager?
And as you say, right down to the bottom level, so the factory, the guys who are working on the machines.
Absolutely.
Did you ever get to see them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you can learn tremendously from the individuals who are working on the factory floor. When I was in the U.S., I worked on our paper business, and making paper. So this is Bounty towels, Bounty paper towels, and Charmin bath tissue, and Puffs facial tissues. That was the business that I was working on. We had about 8,000 people working in that business in North America when I was the vice president running it. Hugely people intensive, hugely capital intensive, and very difficult physical labor. For these individuals. A paper plant operates with, 95 or 98% humidity. It's hot, it's moist, and it's physical labor of wrestling these great big pieces of rolls of paper around.
And they're very heavy, aren't they?
They're very heavy, and it's very hard physical labor. And so meeting with those people was some of the best days of my week or month, because these are real people doing real work, and you're having a real impact on their life. And so I would get better insights, business insights, because they're smart people, and they know that their livelihood rests on whether you're doing a good job of marketing these products or not. And they'd give you insights that you wouldn't get from anyone else, and they wouldn't hold back either in their critique. So it was great. So understanding the nature of their job, understanding what it took to do those jobs, it was important.
I think the other thing that goes with that, and I'm sure you had that. You can't just do it because it's a good idea and it's part of the leadership model. Right, tick, I'll go off and see the guys.
No, they can see
You've got to do
that.
it because it's you.
Yeah,
You've got to do it continuously.
They can, absolutely, because they can see through if you're just doing it to tick the box. And why bother? Because they know whether you're genuine or not. But if you're genuinely listening, and you're genuinely listening to their ideas, and you see them as a source of ideas and a source of insights, it can be hugely rewarding for it. And you can help them to understand why something is important that they might not have liked at all. And you can all learn from that experience.
Did you ever get a good idea from them which you were able to use?
Absolutely. Well, I remember at one point in the paper towel business, in some cases you sell paper towels or napkins that are decorated, have ink on them, right?
Yeah.
And I remember we were pushing a project and trying to get it to market quickly, and I went to the plant and they showed me what it took to clean out the equipment after we had run one color and we had to switch over to another color. And it was literally a guy in a rubber suit with a scrub brush having to scrub all these little parts of the machine. And I had been pushing.
Took him hours,
it took him hours and hours, and it was dreadful work. It was just absolutely terrible. And I was the guy who was, ultimately who was saying, well, we have to do this. Well, understanding it put new perspective, because we also had issues regarding just total throughput, and when you had downtime to scrub the machines, it was reducing your total throughput on the machine, and so tremendous insight. I mean, just going and seeing it myself, I changed direction quite significantly in terms of what I was asking the organization to do, because it was virtually impossible, and I recognized it once I saw it for myself, and that's, I'm sure, why they had me come and watch it. That it was virtually impossible.
Excuse me, come along and have a...
Yeah, if you'd like to get in the rubber suit, you scrub this thing. So I think lots of ideas have come from.
But that's good that they'd even contemplate the fact they can come to your office and say, come and have a look at this.
Yeah, right, right, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So one of your next jobs when you left, let's go back to bad news.
Yes.
When things are going right, and you talked about all the sort of things that good leadership and so on.
Yeah.
Now things are going wrong. Your marketing plan didn't work.
Right.
How did you handle that? Did you get them straight away? Did you open as much as you can, or do you try and
I think absolutely you need to be transparent with people. I think it's a terrible shame if we get bad results and I'm the only guy that feels bad. That's not smart either. I think everybody should feel as bad as I do. and I don't mean that you have to then go whip people, but you need to explain to them that we're losing. Nobody likes to be part of a losing team. And I stood up. I was in that job for 12 years, and every quarter, all employees into an auditorium, and we talk about the business. And so you never go longer than 3 months without talking to all employees, an all-employee meeting, to say, here's where we are against our goals. We're either on track or not on track. And here's where we're on track, here's where we're not. But always complete transparency. That's what we refer to as the adult business deal. We tell you how it is. We tell you when it's good. We tell you when it's not good. But you'd like to have the entire organization all knowing, and knowing what it takes to get good, so that everybody's working against it. You can't have the guys in one department thinking, yeah, everything's just peachy keen, and meanwhile, I'm worried and thinking that the business is going down. You have to have everybody's got to be rowing in the same direction.
Do you have unions in Procter & Gamble?
We don't.
You don't?
We don't in Canada.
So that helps. That changes the complexion a bit. Mm-hmm. But not that there's anything wrong with unions, but I mean, it does mean that you've got a different way of approaching. There must have been situations, though, where you find you couldn't really tell them, because if you did, it's rather like a run on the banks, if you like. Mm-hmm. You don't want it all rush out the door without you being able to explain, actually, hang on a bit, because it might be okay. So weren't there times when you couldn't tell them? Well,
you can't tell everybody everything, because some information is proprietary, and you certainly don't want it to fall into the hands of your competition. But you need to have a set of measures that you can share with the organization. And you need to keep them up to date. People sometimes use the analogy of it would be sort of like bowling, playing bowling, but there's a curtain, and you can't tell if you've hit the pins or not. And there's some guy behind the screen, and you bowl the ball down, and he said, yeah, you've hit 4. You've got 6 left to hit. Well, you don't know where they are, so you just roll another ball, and he said, you hit 1 more, but too bad.
You can't see.
You can't see. So if you can't see the results, then how can you do your best? So I think you have to find, a manager has to find a set of measures that he can have as a scorecard, and hold that scorecard up repeatedly for the organization to say either we're on track or we're not on track. And if we're not on track, here's what it's going to take to get on track. I think that you must. You absolutely must. You can't sequester that information from others.
So, successful at business, your wife, was she working at this stage after Cincinnati?
When we moved to the UK, so that's 15 years her career. She had a 15-year career. We chose to. She took a leave,
Yep.
and then she didn't come back. She didn't.
So you
she didn't
saw them
come
off
back
a bit on that one.
Yes, there were extenuating circumstances, but she chose not to come back.
Right.
Yes.
So now she's family, most important job.
Yes.
Balance between family and work. What do you feel about that?
I think you have to, you have to choose a balance that works for you, and hopefully I chose a balance that worked for me and my family. It helped, certainly, at that point in my career to have Pat, my wife, staying home and taking care of the family. But I tried to make it to, every baseball game or volleyball game or whatever the sport the boys happened to be playing at that time of year.
But I mean, really, everyone would agree that's what the balance is, what we want to get. Mm. But truthfully, do you ever find at times you're saying, damn, this is not good, but I'll get through this bit and it'll be okay
I think
in 3 months?
Yeah.
So you actually weren't
getting
the balance right?
The job I had was a very demanding job, and it was probably a 70-hour-a-week job, and I did it for 12 years. The running P&G in Canada. There's trade-offs. One trade-off, one choice that we made that helped is that we've always lived close to the office, so that commuting didn't become a part of the work-life imbalance.
Right.
My commute to the office was 6 minutes, and
even
so
in Weybridge or Cincinnati,
both when you're living in the UK.
Yeah.
Cincinnati was a little longer; it might be 20, but the traffic moves very well in Cincinnati, Ohio. So I was always very close, and I think commuting is a terrible waste of a life.
Yeah, unless you're sitting in a train or a bus and able to do some work in the train.
If you can do it, I think now with being able to take your computer on the train and so on makes it's different now. But I always that's one choice that we made to try to allow me to spend more time with the family.
Because one of the things I see today with a lot of people is they're in their early 30s, perhaps quite good at what they're doing, and they say, look, we're going to sacrifice the next year. I'm going to work really hard.
Yeah.
Whatever they want me to do, because in 6 years' time, then I'll be able to relax and get the balance right.
Right.
And that doesn't always happen.
No, it definitely does not. To be honest, it helped that Pat and I worked for the same company, because at a time when we were in our 30s and rising up through the organization and had quite responsible jobs, it was easy for us to say, well, yeah, you may be, I could say to my boss, well, I know you want to run that meeting at 5:30. But I have to be home for 6 because Pat's in another meeting, and that one's probably more important, and so I have to go home to spell the babysitter. So the fact that we were in the same company meant that it was hard for them to resent me leaving if she was in a meeting, or her leaving if I was in a meeting, because one of us had to be home. And so I think it's easy for the company to resent the spouse
if she's working for another company.
If she or he is working for the other company. But in our case, the fact that we were both in the same company, I think, helped us.
That's an interesting point, isn't it? So there you are now in the most demanding job and getting the life balance right, and you're doing other things. You're doing a lot of charity stuff by now, aren't you?
I did get involved in a number of charitable organizations, both when I was working and then it's carried on now into my retirement.
But is that because you had time to spare and you felt you better do some good, or
no? It was time to spare. I think it's part of. I think work-life balance is not only work and home balance; it's work and life. And I think part of living the life that you want to live, and part of living the life that you want to demonstrate to your kids, is showing a complete balance. And so, being involved in charities, I think, is important to me to show my kids and for myself to make a contribution back to society. So that's why I made the choice I did. I feel like I have been very fortunate. I have done well, and as I said to my employees, with doing well, there's a responsibility to also do good. Yeah. And so that's why I got involved first with United Way, and then with another number of other charities.
So it's not so much. Some people love hiking or cross-country skiing, and they do that as their other part of their life.
Yeah.
And would you put therefore philanthropy in the same bracket as that, or
I
is
think
it
for
more
people,
to it?
I think you need to find a way to achieve balance in your life, and some portion of balance is to contribute to society. And I like to cross country ski, and I like to stay physically fit and ride my bike in the summer and so on. And you need to carve out time for that, definitely.
Yep.
But I think you also need to carve out time to give back to the community that has allowed you to live the lifestyle that you are living.
Now, you've retired from Procter & Gamble now. Was that your decision, or did you get to a certain age? Or
Well, I got to age 55, and that made it possible. I mean, there is an option that existed for me to exit at age 55, and so and I started talking to my bosses about 2 years prior to my retirement, saying, okay, now I'm 53. When I hit 55, that's my exit. I'll take the exit ramp at 55.
Right.
And they I don't think they believed me completely at first, but they respected the choice. It's a personal choice. And
any particular reason that you can share with us why you decided? Because you look so young and you look fit. Was there any reason particularly why you did that?
It's certainly no dissatisfaction with the company. I think it's a fantastic company. But I had been at that fantastic company for 33 years. I had spent 12 years running the Canadian operation. I was at a stage in my life and age of my kids and so on where I didn't want to move physically again, geographically again, and so it was time to move on. And fortunately for me, financially, I could do it. So why am I retiring? Because I can, and and because there's a whole world out there of other things to explore and do and learn about, and I want to go do some of those things.
Can I go back to now we've been through probably only half of your life. I'm sure you've got lots to go. Who influenced you the most? Who would you say was your biggest influence in your life?
People often ask that. I don't really. I don't have somebody who I look to as being the model. I think I have to say, if there's a person who influenced me the most, it would be my mom. Would be probably the strongest role model in my upbringing. Both my parents, but my dad was focused on the work side. I got work ethic from my dad because he was very focused on work, and he had to be because he had large bills to pay. My mom was the one who was the caregiver, and she's a fantastic lady. She's still alive, and she's a wonderful lady. And I'd say she would be the biggest influence.
So in summing up, what would you say, if I was to say, just give me a sentence or so on young guys setting out in life, not sure what they want to do, and today it seems to be one is encouraged to not expect to be in a job for more than about 2 years, and perhaps retire with lots of money by the time you're 35 so you can do something else, whatever that is. What would your advice be to that?
Well, a couple of pieces of advice. I think one is, it is possible to join one company right out of school and stay there, and so
marry one wife, and
marry one wife and keep her, yes, and keep her with you, both of which I would recommend. No, but I think as a result, choose wisely when you're choosing that first career, because it might be that you find what I was lucky enough to find, which was a perfect connection with a company and a company culture where I fit, they fit with me, they grew, that presented opportunities for me, and so.
Of course, the key word is wisely. They're 22. What's wise? 22. I mean, that's difficult, isn't it?
Yes. Well, but I think just even knowing that it's possible means that you'll take the selection of that first job more seriously, because you know that, gee, this might actually turn into something that has a long longevity. I didn't sign up for life when I joined P&G. I thought I'd stay for a couple of years. But they kept presenting me with new, interesting opportunities that were growthful, where I thought, wow, I think that sounds like fun. That sounds interesting. I want to go do that.
And it was different.
It was always different. I
kept
kept moving from one assignment to another, from a big business to a smaller business, from a fledgling business to something that was large and established. Lots of learning opportunity. The key is not to manage your career path. The key is to manage your learning curve, and keep your learning curve as steep as you can forever. And that's true after I retire. I want to keep my learning curve steep. I was looking yesterday at the continuing education programs at U of T. What can I go study? What can I go learn about? What are some of the, what else?
So you don't say, hey, I'm too old to learn that.
No,
I don't
just the opposite.
Yeah.
I'm old, I better keep learning, or I'm going to reach my denouement.
Whereas a lot of people would say, have the feeling that if I don't know it, therefore they lack confidence because they think they should know it. Whereas I think probably the biggest factor in your life is optimism. You've always had the glass half full.
And I think that's what I got from my mom.
And I think
back to where I got that from my mother, who had a tough life and yet has always been optimistic. And I think that's where it comes from. And it's true. I think that optimism helps, but it's also the yearning for learning, that keeps you going.
Tim, thank you very much indeed. It's been great fun and a pleasure having you.
My pleasure.
And I hope you enjoyed it too.
I did, absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Well, thank you very much indeed for watching. That concludes this show, and it's been brought to you by Black Isle Group, a company that specializes and loves teaching people how to speak well. So I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have, I hope you watch the next one. Goodbye.